This video, I'm going to be making cheese boards out of plywood. That's Quick Play, welcome to the video. I said I wasn't going to do this, but here we are, making cheese boards. I might end up skipping a few key sections on this because the process is virtually the same as what I did in the pizza board video. And if you didn't watch that one, I'll put it in the top corner for you now. But whilst doing that video, I had a few ideas on how to improve it. There's a few questions in the comments that I want to address. Found another big bag of scrap plywood that I need to use up. And a few of my friends and family have asked for these for Christmas, so I need to make more of them. So we're going to start with the scrap wood version first, and then later in the video, we'll make a nicer version from scratch. I've already been cutting and sticking some scrap wood together, so we'll get into it from here.
First we had to trim these scrap blocks all to the same level and square them all up. Pretty much got the right amount of scrap wood straight away. The handle's long enough, but the board isn't wide enough. So I rearranged the scrap for extra width and beefed up the handle. Like in the pizza board video, I trimmed the existing pieces to exactly the same width, but this time I created solid blocks by putting strips of wood either side, and that was going to space it out to make it wide enough. Then I ran them back through the table saw to make sure they were all the same thickness. I'm testing something new on this one. I'm going to use my really shoddy drill press to actually put dowels in between each section to hopefully strengthen them up.
Whilst this one's drying, I'm going to speed up my process and start filling all the big gaps with sawdust.
I also put a couple of bits of dowel in the handle. With all the random bits of plywood, the handle fell apart on the pizza board one when I was cutting it. So I'm hoping this adds a bit more strength and it might make it look more interesting. I thought I was being clever putting a strip of wood either side of the blocked sections to make them stronger. But if I leave these edge pieces on, the sides are going to look horrible and boring, so I just trimmed them off, and it looks much more interesting now. Time to router this baby flat.
She's looking pretty flat. I just give it a quick blast with 80 grit sandpaper. There is lots of gaps to fill, lots of things to tidy up. But before we do that, we're going to give it a spray with some water to make the wood fibres stand up. Woo! There is some big gaps on this one. Some of them you can actually see right through. So we're going to plug it with glue and sawdust. One of the comments on the pizza board video said, the glue in plywood is harmful to humans. I did as much research as I could. There's a few websites that said yes, the glue that is used on plywood is harmful to humans in its liquid form. Lots of people saying that once it's sanded and treated, it's fine. There is hundreds of videos out there of people making plywood chopping boards. I couldn't find anything anywhere that said eating off plywood was a terrible idea. But if someone does know that it's a terrible idea, please tell me in the comments. But just to be safe, I have bought some food-safe epoxy. Now, I've sanded it with 40 grit sandpaper. I'm going to put a layer of this and let it soak in, then put a second layer to fill the gaps, then do a very fine pass with the router, and that should seal as much of the top surface as possible with this food-safe epoxy. I had it the wrong way around, didn't I? I don't exactly have the answer, but I'm doing my best not to poison my friends and family. All the holes are filled, it's completely flat, time to cut the shape. Now I've made this one a little bit longer than my actual cheese board, and that means the handle's a bit longer as well. So I'm going to have to make this up as I go along, but I think I actually want my handle a little bit thicker than that. Now it's time to build a brand new chopping board out of plywood from scratch. In the pizza video, I was planning on using 18mm ply. In the end, I chose to use 12mm ply, but in my experience, the bigger the plywood, the worse the imperfections in the middle are. So in this video, we're going to use 4mm plywood and see if there's any improvement. I was going to make my strips 2cm tall, but I've had to make them 3cm tall to accommodate for all the tear out and the edges that aren't going to be straight. Whilst putting this together, I learned something. When I was clamping this entire thing up, I had nowhere to put the clamps on this section. So if I was working with 4mm plywood again, I would put 3 together, 3 together, 3 together, and then put those clumps of wood in a 45-degree angle. And that should give you enough place to clamp it. The other thing I learned is this isn't going to be long enough to make some V-sections, so I'm going to have to be quite creative in how I put it together. But let's get it chopped up first.
Of course, I ruined it straight away, so here's a hot tip when cutting angled plywood. When running it through the table saw, make sure the angle is pointed right to the corner like this. If it's slanted the other way, the table saw can knock the end pieces off, and that's what's happened to me. These little angle clamps I use are just a right angle clamp that was really terrible, so I cut it in half and it's much more useful.
Now I'm going to have to get really creative because this isn't enough to make my cheese board. Earlier in the video, I squared up some pieces which left me with some angled offcuts. So after a bit of chopping and sticking, we now have this piece. Then if we add to that the strip I saved for the handle, the piece that was too small, and a weird offcut, we now have all these. So now I've got to figure out a nice pattern that will go right down the centre and frame the handle. If you were making one of these, just buy a bigger sheet of plywood. I'm not doing that because I don't like spending money. Okay, looks like I'm going to have to cheat because I don't have enough wood. And if I'm going to cheat properly because this is going to be a present. So I'm going to use this spare piece of 9mm and then just add a nice consistent pattern down the middle. Ooh, it's all glued up and looking interesting. Now, I didn't use the dowels on this one. This one's been a bit of a pain and I ran out of time, that's why I didn't do it. So, will this be as strong as the other one? I don't know. Next, I've got to flatten it off and I'm basically just going to do all the steps I did on the first one. Because I used brand new wood on this one, there's hardly any gaps at all. There's one section on this middle column that I got it wrong, and there's a section on the back where somehow the wood got tore out. A little bit of glue and sawdust, then it'll be ready for epoxy.
Top tip when you're filling gaps with glue and sawdust. I use the stuff out of the bag on my sander because it's normally super fine and fills the gaps really well. Because some of the corner pieces had already broken off, and it had an angled pattern already, I decided to make the corners straight on this one. I didn't know if it was going to work, but you'll find out if it looks good at the end of the video. I was experimenting quite a bit with this piece, so I decided to try my first flat angle edge to see how it would turn out. Then I added the juice groove, which was really tricky when it came to the angled edges near the handle. To finish these off, I gave them 5 coats of chopping board oil. I got told I didn't coat the pizza boards enough. Some people actually submerged them in oil, so I decided to give the pizza boards another round as well.
Best to give me your loyalty. Best to give me your loyalty. Cause I'm taking the world, you'll see. They'll be calling me, calling me. They'll be calling me, calling me. They'll be calling me royalty.
The cheese boards are done with 2 days to spare. Why did I look at my watch? So I gave these about 3 coats of chopping board oil. After I did that, I actually went over it with some 320 wet and dry with a bit of cutting board oil, then 400, then 600, then 800. The reason I did that, I've seen a video somewhere where it says once you get past about 400, you're not sanding it, you're kind of sealing it, polishing it and buffing it. It helps seal everything in, I think, but it also feels silky smooth. Now this first one I did is pretty thin, but this is the one that's got some dowels in the side pieces, so hopefully it adds some extra strength. There's some very cool patterns in this one. My favorite bit of this is the strip down the middle. But yeah, as you look through the board, there's just loads of little different pieces and features, and that's what I like about these scrap wood projects. You've got no idea what it's going to look like, and it ends up looking crazy and different. Very happy with that one. That is going to go to my friend Haley, I think. Next is the little hexagonal doodah thingy. Now, the triangle, square, thingy patterns down the side, they're crazy. I love them. But the bit that really makes this piece is the accident in the middle. When I ran out of wood and I picked up that scrap wood, I don't know where it came from. I don't know what type of wood it was. But when I applied the oil, it started looking awesome. Now, this one did have a slight issue. I drilled the hole in the supporting piece, and whilst I was filming it, it snapped. So I am just in the middle of fixing it with couple of pieces of dowel, and then obviously I'm going to glue it up. This one's going to my dad once it's fixed, obviously. There we go, another video in the bag, some more presents done. They need to be wrapped. It would be awesome if you could subscribe, but if you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching. If you've got any tips, questions or suggestions, stick them in the comments below. I am working on another video. There was some more presents that I made. Don't know when I'm going to get to edit that, but hopefully it will be soon. So yeah, thanks very much for watching. Thanks for all the people subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.
They'll be calling me royalty.